Hello and welcome to the channel. This will be the last and final video in this series. This is our Japan Ground Self-Defense Force Type 87 Recon Vehicle by Trumpeter in 1/35th scale. In this video we're going to be doing decals, weathering, and a final reveal at the end, so you're not going to want to miss that. So let's go ahead and jump right in and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is take Tester's flat steel enamel, and we're going to have to do a little bit of weathering on our tools, and I'm just kind of dry brushing this a little bit onto the tool surface, and I'm concentrating on these areas where the tools would have wear and the paint would be worn off on it. And the great thing about using enamels is we can come back in with some enamel thinner and do some blending and removal if we get too much on there and it doesn't look too good. So this process is pretty straightforward. Just take your time and you don't have to worry about it. If it dries a little bit, it's okay. A little bit of enamel thinner and you can move those pigments around or remove them if you get too much somewhere where you don't like it. And we're also going to use it here on our tow cable just to highlight the cable detail a little bit here. You just want to be really careful and make sure that you don't get it on the paint that's on the vehicle. Little bitty spots of flat steel wouldn't look too good on our camouflage. So next, after that dries, we're going to use some Tamiya X22. Now this is a gloss clear, and I'm going to thin it for the airbrush, and we're just going to coat the vehicle in that, and that'll prepare the surface for us for decals. And so I'm hoping that we're not going to have any issues with these decals like I had in a previous build. So I'm picking out this particular scheme right here because I really like these graphics and I think it's going to look really good on this vehicle. So the first thing you do, of course, once you've trimmed out the decals, is to go ahead and place it in water for a few seconds. Now I think I kind of leave this in here too long, but one of the things that you want to do is make sure that you have everything laid out that you're going to use. A little brush for applying the micro set, which is what I'm going to be using here for trying to help the decals adhere better. Before I use that though, I want to kind of test this, so I'm going to go to the underside here of the turret, put that micro set down, and see what happens with it. And as you can see here, it doesn't really react with the paint or anything. It just it will dry and dry nice and flat. So I had problems with micro sol in a previous build, and so I'm going to do a little test surface right here, bottom of the turret. And as you can see, it does change the color and it's a little bit tacky. And so it is penetrating and partially dissolving the paint. Now this is coated in the X22 Tamiya acrylic gloss clear, but this micro sol is apparently pretty aggressive on the paint surface and really tacky. So we are not going to use micro sol on our decals. So after having our decal soaked for a few seconds here, it's probably been about a minute, but I'm going to lay it on a piece of paper towel here, and we're going to let the excess water drain off, and I'm going to add a little bit of micro set in the area where we want our decal to go. And really simple process, just slide the decal off. And from past experience, I think it's a good idea to try to have it as lined up as possible when it comes off and goes into place. So I do need to adjust it just a little bit here. So what I'm going to do is take a little bit of the micro set and put it on the brush, and we're just going to go around the edges here, and that'll kind of help refloat this decal so that it moves for us. Don't want to use too much, just enough. And then we can easily take and adjust it and get it aligned. Now I'm just using a hillbilly toothpick here to do that. And then the next step, of course, would be drain any excess liquid away from it. And you're gonna want to make sure that it's stuck in position. I moved it just a little bit, but it went right back. We're in good shape here. And I'm just gonna roll right over top of it here. And I'm just pressing down on it and squeezing out the excess water and microset that's underneath it. And we're going to do all of our decals like that. Get them all into place. So once we get our decals into place and let them dry completely, I'm going to be going back over it with the X22. And when I do this, what we're going to want to do is just the decals themselves. We want to seal those in, and that'll protect it from our weathering, and hopefully we won't have any lifting or any issues with our decals. Now once all that dries, we can go ahead and start working on our chipping. And so we have our base olive green and our medium brown here. These are water-based acrylics. These are craft paints, so they're going to be kind of thick. And as you can see here, I've just put one dot of white in each of it. That'll give these colors a little bit lighter tint than what the base color is on the vehicle. And make sure you mix this up really good. You need to thin it because these craft paints, like I say, are really thick. And once that's thoroughly mixed, we'll be ready to use our sponge chipping technique. And for that, we need to select some pieces of sponge. So what I have here is a small selection here. Well, 2 pieces is a small selection. Now these are synthetic sponge, kind of like packing type sponge stuff, but I'm using water-based acrylics, so I don't really have a big issue. If you're going to use a solvent-based or thinner-based paint to do your chipping, almost forgot what I was going to say there. You're going to want to test that to make sure that the sponges don't dissolve in the thinners. Anyway, I'm just checking it right here to see my pattern. I want a real fine pattern, and also we can check our color right on the bottom of the vehicle. The bottom of the vehicle is a good place to test a lot of things, and here we're just checking out our sponge technique and also the color differential, I guess we'll call it. Yeah, it looks pretty good. We're going to use that. So it's pretty simple, green on green and brown on brown. And we're just going to concentrate on the edges and any areas where a little bit of chipping detail will help keep the vehicle from being terribly boring. Just go really light though. These vehicles didn't get super chipped up. And here you can see the difference between the brown on brown and green on green on the wheels. And it's important that you don't forget to do your drivetrain, your wheels. Just make sure that you cover all the bases there. And here on the turret you can see brown on brown, green on green. And it's really just lightening up just edges and corners. So with that completed, and I'm not going to do real heavy chipping on this. This is about it for chipping. So now it's time for a little bit of panel liner. I'm going to use this brown Tamiya panel liner. Now it is an enamel based panel liner, so it'll be easy for us to clean up. And I'm going to use a brush here instead of the brush that comes in the panel liner bottle because it's too big and I end up dropping too much panel liner on her to have to clean up. So the tighter you are with this process, the easier it is to clean it up and refine it later on. So we're just going to go over the vehicle. I'm starting here with the turret, of course, and the hatches. We just want to flow that into any panel lines, crevices, and around any of the details here. And we'll go ahead and do the same thing with the lower hull as well. Lower hull? Well, the hull of the vehicle. And also around the doors, handles, whatever you got sticking out on the side of the vehicle. Just go ahead and put that panel liner in there. Now I did get a little bit too much there, but we'll come back and clean that up. So when it's time to clean up, I'm going to use this Tester's enamel thinner here. Now this is clean thinner, and a small brush, and you just need to lightly dampen the brush. And I use a paper towel to take most of the thinner off. To tell you the truth, in this process, you tend to take more thinner off your brush than you're actually using on the vehicle. But we just want to clean up everything here, these little dirty smudges that are out away from the details. I'm just going to clean that up. So it comes off really easy, and that's mostly due to the fact that we have coated this vehicle with that X22 clear gloss from Tamiya. So by sealing that flat paint with the X22, it makes it much easier to just kind of erase anything that has fanned out across the surface. Now you're going to want to walk away from this and come back later and make sure that you've gotten everything. Kind of looking at it with a fresh set of eyes, and really inspect the vehicle. Because once you seal this in, you're kind of stuck with it. So you're going to want to make sure that it's the way you want it before you leave it. And with that, once that's completely dry, we're going to use this Model Master Acryl Flat Clear and seal everything in. Now this is a dry pigment, light slate gray, and I'm going to use it in conjunction with Vallejo's pigment binder, and it's a acrylic water-based binder. And the ideal here is to get the pigments to kind of build up into some body, giving us texture and some mass for our weathering. But it really didn't work out too good for me overall. Probably the color that I picked, or my application of it. I did get this body to solidify, of course, but the look was terrible. So I decided I would go ahead and I would just take all the loose stuff off of it and go in a little bit different direction. So I did use some warm water to do this and a soft brush. And as you can see here, the wheels, they cleaned up pretty good. There's a little bit of residual gray on the side of the tires. That's not an issue really, because I'm decided to go with enamel washes, which is going to look much better than what I had. And on the side of the vehicle though, we did have some problems with the paint. You can see the graying there on the bottom portion there, and then right on top. So I'm really disappointed in that. So I didn't know really what I was going to do about it. So I was trying to clean it up with a Q-tip and a little bit of water here, and I noticed as long as it's wet or got that wet look, the damage or the pigments that are stuck into the surface of the paint, they don't show up. So what I decided to do was to go ahead and recoat everything in X22, hoping that that would clear up the finish for us and I wouldn't have to go back in and repaint the entire vehicle. And that worked pretty good. It did away with that gray chalky look, which I really didn't like. So that kind of set me back a little bit here on the build, but we live and learn. So once our X22 gloss clear dries, we come back in with our flat clear. Now this is the Model Master Acryl again, and we recoat everything so it's all nice and uniform. So these are the products we're going to use for our weathering: the Vallejo Thick Mud, then the AK Interactive Fresh Mud, Dark Mud, and Earth Effects. So here in the areas where in my cleanup efforts, I've removed some of that texturing. I'm going to come back in with this acrylic thick mud, and add that texturing back. Now this is a water-based acrylic product, and if you'd like to thin it out, you can thin it out, which is what I do here. It's always easier to build it up than it is to try to remove some, especially since this is an acrylic based. Once it has dried, it becomes hard as plastic, so you just want to be careful. Make sure you get it where you want it and remove it right away with say a cotton bud and some water. Don't let it dry if it's somewhere where you don't want it. So we're going to go ahead and just build up these areas where the mud's going to collect on the bottom of the vehicle. And we're also going to use it around the rim of the wheels here. Just add just a little bit of body to it so that we put our enamel weathering products over top of it, that it's got a little bit of body there. So for our first weathering color, we're going to use this dark mud. And like I say, this is an enamel base. Straight out of the bottle, it's really thick and it takes a tremendously long time to dry. So what we are going to do is thin it out just a little bit. And since it's enamel, we're going to use enamel thinner. And about 4 drops is about all we're going to need here. I still need it to have its depth of color, but I don't want it as thick and gummy as it is. So once we get it all thinned out, it's time to go ahead and apply it to the vehicle. Now of course we've allowed our acrylic thick mud to dry completely before we start adding this enamel based product over top of it. And so we really just need to kind of get this on there, and it's going to soak up into that dry pigment too and change the color of that. No real issue with this. It goes straight on, and the great thing about it is that it's easy to deal with and easy to blend and easy to clean up. So the next color we're going to come in is the Earth Effects, and so I do the same thing with it. We're going to put some of it in our paint palette, and we will thin that as well. And we're going to use this color on the high spots. So this would be up inside the fender well, a little bit on the side of the wheel well there. And of course there will be wheel splash up along these bottom edges here of the vehicle. So we're going to go ahead and put some of our Earth Effects along those edges too. And we'll come back in later and kind of blend them out. Now I'm not waiting between the 2 different shades that we're using here, and ultimately 3 different shades. I just keep going and keep adding. If it mingles, then that's fine. We're going to come back in, and whatever doesn't blend, we're going to blend that. So we just keep adding our color on areas where it's going to splash and run, and the back of the vehicle, the mud flaps. Just get this pigment in logical areas where the mud is going to be on it. Now we're going to use the dark mud also in the tire tread area. And I know I'm jumping back and forth from one to the other. So the Earth Effects is the lighter one. The dark mud is the one that I'm using right now. And thinking about it as dark on low and light on high kind of gives some sense to the way I'm applying this. So the center of the wheels and high up on the sidewalls are going to be the lighter color, and dark, of course, down around the tread of the vehicle. Now fresh mud is the darkest of the colors. It's nearly black, and you can use that for oil staining or just blending it in to give different contrasting colors in your mud. So I'm just going to kind of stick this on in some target areas. We'll come back and blend that later, but you're looking here, corners of the mud flaps, the very bottom edge of them. This is areas where the water's going to collect the most in the mud, keeping it darker. Now once we get everything where we want it, and I'm not waiting for it to dry, I'm just putting it on, and then I'm coming back and I'm going to blend it. So I've got my rather frayed brush here, and we're going to use a little bit of enamel thinner, and we're just going to blend these edges. It's much easier to do right now than it will be if we wait a day or two, so we're going to go ahead and blend these now. And that was a lesson that I learned earlier on. And as you can see, the blending helps smooth out the transition between the different colors, and that's the effect that we want to have there. And we're going to come in also on the mud flaps and kind of fade it at the top and blend it at the bottoms, just whatever looks good to you. Just a tapping blending motion here. We're not using real brush strokes, which just kind of tapping it in, and that kind of feathers the pigments out. Gives us a nice look. Now we're going to also apply this technique to the sidewalls of our wheels or tires. So anywhere where we've got a hard line where you can really see the difference between the two colors, we're going to kind of want to blend that together so that it has more of a transition. And it's okay if there's a couple of spots where the tire shows through, that's fine. Mud's not a uniform thing. So once that sets up fairly well, it's not dry by any means, I do come back in with a cotton bud here, or a hillbilly Q-tip, and we're just going to clean off the pigment from the raised surfaces of the tire. That would be the high portions of the tread here. And the reason why is because mud's not going to stay there as the vehicle runs down the road or wherever, you know, it's going to kind of come off. And so I'm also going to come in on the edges of the tires here, just right on the bottom portion of this tread detail, and I'm going to clean that up too. And that makes the tires a little bit more interesting to look at rather than it just being, say, solid brown. That's not much to look at. So a little bit of visual interest. That's the phrase I was looking for. So now we need us a wash for the top of the vehicle. Now this is the AK Earth Effects, and we're just going to need a couple of drops of this, not very much. So I do thin this out considerably. It's a lot. I don't know how much. It's hillbilly paint chemistry, so but you want it really, really thin. And we're just going to kind of put it all over the vehicle here. We're going to put it on the front slope here, on the top of the vehicle, also down the sides of the vehicle. It's just a real light pigment wash, and don't go really mad with it. Just kind of get it on there. Just make sure that the whole surface is wet. And I do the turret as well. I need to mention that. Now I've got this big wide brush here, nice soft brush, dampened with just the enamel thinner, and I'm just lightly coming over the surface of the vehicle here, as you can see, and we're just kind of streaking it, and it's really that easy. Up and down on the sides here, going to pull the pigment down, real easy. And we do need to clean the excess pigment off the brush from time to time, but we are fading this wash into that heavier mud area that we put on the bottom of the hull there. And we're also going over the turret, just streaking it. And then on the surfaces that are parallel to the ground, that are flat like this, we just use a stippling motion there. And that will pretty much wrap up this particular build, guys. Quick review on everything that we've done here, or this kit rather. Really nice kit. Very few fit issues, just a little bit on that back plate to the upper hull fit issue where we used a little bit of filler and sanded that down. And then again in the front of the turret, a couple of spots there in the corners underneath the main armament, and that was it. The rest of it was just fine. It went together great. And this kit has a considerable amount of PE, if you stop and think about it. The front quarter fenders, and the mud flaps, and a couple other little pieces here and there. The straps for our jerry cans on the back of the vehicle are also PE. And so that's really nice, and provides us with really good detail. And it's not so much PE that you're overwhelmed with it, so that is really appreciated by me. I'm not all that good with PE. But if you do like lots of PE, there are 3 sets of photo etch that's available for this kit. That's down in the description, so if you'd like those part numbers and the manufacturer, I've provided that in the description for you guys. And another note though, the antennas, that is stretch sprue. I didn't show that in this video. And also the exhaust is artist oil paint. And it's just kind of stippled and fanned out a little bit there, and allowed to dry completely. So special thanks to all my subscribers. It's because you guys are watching that I keep putting these little videos out for you to enjoy. And I know I like to watch videos while I'm modeling, and I hope you guys enjoy these too. Leave me a comment in the comment sections. Let me know how you think this one turned out. And if you are new to the channel and you're not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, and hit that notification bell so you'll be notified when I post a new video. And if you like this video, please do me a favor, go ahead and press that like button. I'd appreciate that. Kind of helps these videos of mine to become more visible to others. So with that, guys, I will see you in the next video.